So we are recording. Again, thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you for all your work throughout the season. This is Mike Zarnowski with Special Olympics Maryland. It's in tonight's session, which we've got an hour blocked out, but I don't know that we'll need that much time, is just a quick review of things for our upcoming state bowling championship, which is this coming Sunday at the Bowl America Gaithersburg facility. If you could please, if you haven't already done so, please do mute your phone. You can use either the mute function on your phone or press *6 to mute and unmute. While we certainly do want your questions and your any commentary that you have, we want to minimize the background noise. That can be very difficult for other folks. So even if you think you're being quiet, you'd be surprised how much additional noise can come through. So if you haven't muted your phone, if you could please do so, that would be great. And we'll go ahead and get started. We can go through the schedule, the facility, competition notes, and so on as you see here. There shouldn't be any surprises here. Everything was included in, or pretty much everything was included in the event guide that went out prior to the regional competition. And this is just an opportunity to review some things. And the only difference may be some stuff related to on-site registration and a couple things along those lines. So we'll go ahead. The schedule, as was in the event guide that went out for this. Delegation registration is open from 9 till 10. Your teams or your individual bowlers must be there by 10 o'clock. If they are not, anybody who has not checked in by 10 o'clock, they're going to be scratched because we have to get that information to the facility itself so that they can go through the electronic scorekeeping and eliminate anybody who is not here, otherwise it screws up the scoring for everybody else. So need to be there by 10. And that was a similar type of thing that we had set up for the regional tournament as well. We will have an opening ceremony starting at 10 o'clock. It will be fairly brief. We have a half an hour blocked out. It may not take that entire time. There then will be some warm-up opportunity. Please do share the space on your lanes. I don't think there's any more on any lane more than 5 people or no more than 10 people on a pair of lanes. There may be a lane that has like 6 people because it's doubles teams, but then the adjoining lane won't have more than 4. So there'll be some time there that everybody should be able to get to roll a frame. If that can start earlier, ceremonies is done earlier, of course we'll start the warm-ups earlier as well. But during that time, during ceremonies and during this time here, we'll be going through confirming everybody that's there, making sure that the computer system is up and running and has everything good to go. And then we'll go ahead and have competition beginning at 10:45. The estimated competition end time will be 2 o'clock. And at that point, or as soon as we have awards spaces available where we can be presenting them, we'll start that as soon as that's available. We'll talk a little bit more about awards in there later. We will have, unlike at the regional tournaments, at the state tournament, we will be providing lunch for all registered delegation members. A registered delegation member is someone who was listed on the delegation list that I emailed out to everybody. I think it went out, there's 2 different versions that went out just prior to Thanksgiving. So anybody who's listed on there, there'll be a meal ticket for them. It's a box lunch, and we'll talk about that in a bit as well. The facility, again, this is the Gaithersburg, the Bowl America Gaithersburg. There's a main parking lot out here in front of the building. The main turn off the road is right in front here. There's additional parking over on this side and a small amount of additional parking around this side as well. For check-in, I'll talk about these check-in locations here that are in green in a moment. But for your delegation to check in, or you as the head coach, come over here to the main scoring room. It's just inside, go past the front desk, and it'll be on the left, and there'll be a sign there as well. That's where you as a head coach would check in. That is not where your individual athletes would check in. We'll have a family's hospitality space behind the front desk there. Lunch distribution will be along some tables here right at the entranceway. Volunteer registration is in the party room back here. There's actually a separate entrance for volunteers to come in. That'll be signed over here. Please still have your bowlers come in through the main entrance. If you're not familiar with the facility, it's laid out with 48 lanes going from, as you're facing the lanes on the far left is lane 1 to lane 48 on the far right. We have, I believe, 4 athletes who use ramps, and I'm making an assumption that they also use wheelchairs, although that's not necessarily the case. We have, I believe, one of them, which is on a traditional doubles team, is here on lane 48, and the other 3 are on lanes 1, 2, and 3, I think, here at the beginning there. And that's where the access is to get to the ramps for access there. And again, we'll talk about these check-in locations in a moment. As reminders, again, this is all the same as we had at the regional bowling events. Everybody will roll 3 games. We'll use 100% of 200 handicap system. In other words, the handicap will be added to each person's score for each game. Excuse me. Will be 100% of the difference between their average and 200. So it and that's a change from previous years, but again, it's the same as what we did 3 weeks ago. We will use the foul lanes. We will alternate lanes, except in kind of significant or extreme circumstances, which should be very limited, if any, where we wouldn't alternate lanes. And again, that's between the 2 lanes back and forth. And of course, we'll be practicing proper bowling and lane courtesy. Again, I'm not going to review everything that we went over for the regional tournaments. These are just some reminders. With ramps, for the 4 folks who have bowlers who use ramps, they had to be designated as a ramp bowler in advance, which they all were. They've been divisioned with the other bowlers or with the other doubles teams for the one that's there. You're expected to bring your own ramp. You need to have your ramp assistant brought from your area. And I'm not going to go over the details on that. It's in the guide, it's in the event guide, and was reviewed for the regional and at the preseason. But the ramp itself needs to be set by or be set under the direction of the bowler, and the specifics of that, since it only affects 4 bowlers, I'm not going to go into here. But it's the same as the rules that we had. And if the bowler can't do that, the bowler cannot set or give the direction. We'll deal with it. It may wind up with that bowler being disqualified. We'd still let them bowl, but it would be for a participation ribbon. Uniforms, again, no changes to this, but just some reminders that all the participants, including the ramp assistants out there that aren't in proper uniform, will be disqualified if they aren't in proper attire. And there were a couple exceptions. I think Al and Howard County had one last year, or not last year, where the athlete utilizes a wheelchair and basically can't get into the uniform as is described here. And of course, in those kinds of situations, or if there's anything unique, just talk to us and we'll take care of if there's an appropriate or a necessary exception. We'll work with you on that. A necessary exception is not my athlete forgot to wear his uniform. But again, we'll work with you. Again, you see the stuff there on the pants or shorts. Again, big thing is not jeans, not sweat. Other than, again, we had that one exception that we made a couple weeks ago. Collared shirts and such, and then need to wear bowling shoes and no hats or headwear. And again, that is, excuse me, no change from what we've had last year, this year, 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, whatever the case may be. For on-site registration, again, it will take place in the control center or that meeting room that's there. Again, there'll be a sign there for delegation registration. Submit any scratches that you know of at that time. We appreciate the thought of sending stuff to us ahead of time, but in all honesty, at this point, the bowling lanes already have all the lane assignments. They're putting it in. There's not going to be anything that we're going to do other than probably lose them or forget about them if you send us scratches now. Have your coaches take care of the scratches that morning, and that'll be fine. There's a packet for each delegation. That includes your name tags, your delegation rosters, heat sheets, as well as your lunch tickets. And then after you pick up your packet, again, one head coach, do not send individual athletes in to register or anything like that. It's your head coach or a designee, if you have a head of delegation, would pick this stuff up. then go to the particular location where we'll have a sign for your delegation that we have designated for check-in, and that's where you can connect up with your people. We'll look at that in the slide in just a second. Those are those green things we were talking about. The purpose behind that is just to give some semi-organization to the mass of people coming in, and you can give them some designation as to what lanes you'll be nearby. And that's where you can, for the registration portion, connect with your bowlers, give them their name tags, give them whatever other information you need, and then they can go to their individual lanes. After you're done checking in, that's we ask you to vacate or whatever. That's not sort of your permanent parking space. Again, there's a limited space for spectators and such, and this is really just a check-in point. So these assignments are based on the size of the delegations and such that we have. For Allegheny, you'll have a space with your Allegheny sign behind lanes 1 and 2, Anne Arundel behind 3 and 4. Give a little bit of space. Baltimore City behind 7 and 8, and so on down the line. The two differences to this, because of their size and wanting to make sure we have plenty of space, is Howard County will have a space back here in the game room, back behind where the families are, and Montgomery County will have a space right outside of the control center. We'll have a little, we'll get a table or something there that you can use to check folks in. For the rest of the folks, you'll just use the existing table space that's there. If we have the volunteers to do so, and it looks like we'll have a really good volunteer turnout, we'll have some folks here to greet people and direct them to where they need to go. But please, 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 let your bowlers, let your families, whatever, know this is where they should go to check in. You already received in the list that I sent you, I guess it was on Wednesday of last week, what lanes everybody is assigned to, what their lane and their division number and so on. That was the second version of the roster that we sent out. The first one had the same names, but they just didn't have the lane assignments or the divisions on theirs. But they already have those. But this is where they can check in and get the paperwork or get the stuff from you. Okay? And then again, after you check in, if you could, go to wherever. It may well be that you don't have anybody near that space. You'll also notice that it's sort of, other than Montgomery and Howard County, it's essentially alphabetical order from lane 1 to lane 48 with the space that's there. So it should be, in theory, relatively easy for people to find quickly their delegation. And a thank you to Debbie Fickenshire for this idea, which we planned to implement last year had the event actually taken place. The opening ceremony, again, it will be brief, maybe 20 minutes or so. We have a little bit of a buffer in there. We are looking for nominees for the athlete oath. If you have someone who you think would be interested and capable, and again, we don't want to be exclusionary by any means, but this is a role where the athlete would need to have a clear speaking voice, be able to enunciate clearly, be able to read. We'll have the oath written out on paper, and be comfortable speaking in front of a group. So if the athlete doesn't meet those three criteria, don't put them in a potentially embarrassing situation by nominating them. We don't know all the athletes. And if we have more than one nominee, we'll look at some type of a drawing or selection, or look at who's done this most recently, and we'll select from that. If you do have someone that you're interested in doing this, please send their name to Melissa Anger no later than Thursday night, and her email is there. It's also going to be, I'll put it in the email that I send out to you with the slides and such. But again, and then we'll let the selectee, or the head coach and the area director of the selectee know no later than by Friday. Okay. Some additional notes, as I mentioned before, late arrivals will be eliminated from competition. The only exceptions are going to be extreme or truly unique circumstances. An example of that, it's not I woke up late. It's last year for one of the regional events, a county, their van got into a traffic accident and had to work to shuttle. They had to send cars out to pick them up and bring them in. So that that's an extreme situation. But drill into your folks, be there on time, as early as 9, absolutely no later than 10. Down on the lanes themselves, only competitors and competition personnel are permitted, so that's the scorekeepers, the bowlers, of course, and ramp assistants down on the lanes. We've gone through previously about coaching and such in terms of I'm not going to go through that again for you, but just as a reminder, your bowlers need to be ready to bowl when it's their turn. They can come up to you between frames, you and your coaching roll back behind the seats, but please, we don't want them to miss their turn because they're up talking with you. Similarly, we don't want them to miss their turn because they've gone to the snack bar or whatever. They're there to bowl. So seating will be limited. We do have, I think it's about 100 extra folding chairs that are brought in addition to what the bowling facility has available there, and those will be placed throughout. Certainly, the bowlers need to have the seats first, and please do accommodate that and practice common courtesy. This last bullet there is only because we ran into that at one of the regionals a year ago, and that is someone placed their chair somewhere where it couldn't stay because it was blocking traffic, and the person flatly refused to move. That can't be permitted, and we'll take whatever measures, even to the point where this would be only as a last resort, where we disqualify or have the person ejected from the facility. Certainly don't want to do that. Please talk to your family members or your other coaches ahead of time. When we ask you to move a chair, it's not because we don't like that person or we want somebody else to be able to sit there. It's for fire regulations and for traffic flow. So please do ask them to be accommodating as far as that goes. We want this to be a wonderful, positive experience, but if someone tells you need to move your chair from the bowling alley or from Special Olympics Maryland, they need to move the chair. Lunch, as I mentioned, will be served to all registered delegation members. The box lunch, they will have a ticket that'll be in your bag or in your packet. There's a sandwich in there. It's either a ham, turkey, or a veggie. There's a snack item like chips or something like that. A dessert item and bottled water. If you have any special meal needs, they can certainly accommodate it. The facility is great. We've already got pre-ordered a number of gluten-free ones. We just want to designate them for the appropriate people. I'm sorry, I should also have noted there is no cheese. We asked them to keep things simple. There is no cheese on the sandwiches, so any kind of lactose intolerance or issue like that should not be an issue, so don't need to send us anything on that. But if you do have someone who needs a gluten-free meal, or if you have some other truly special need and only eats lobster or steak is not a special need, it's a special preference. But if you do have somebody who has a special need, please send that again as well to Melissa Anger by Thursday night. We'll need the name of that specific individual, and we'll have the lunch labeled for them, so it's off to the side. When you pick up the lunches, unlike at some events where we have the head coach come up and pick up all the lunches for their folks, the way that the bowling tournament operates, that just isn't practical, either for you or for the organizers of the event. So the individual, well, you certainly can do that if you want. The individual bowlers will come up and get their with their lunch ticket and get their lunch that way. Because the different lanes are going to take short breaks for lunch at different points, or may wait, depending upon how quickly they're bowling through, may wait until they're done and finishing at different points. So that's that. And again, awards will be presented starting at 2 o'clock. We use as a criterion that if there are adjoining lanes, a sufficient number, that starting presentations there will not disturb anybody who is still bowling, then we'll go ahead and start the presentations there. But the last thing that we want to do, one of the last things that we want to do would be to adversely affect the bowler's performance who's still bowling because there's awards going on in a lane next door to them. So even if your lane is done for a while, please keep the bowlers at the lanes, and we'll get started as soon as we can. There was, for those of you who were at Gaithersburg 3 weeks ago, there was a little bit of a, I don't call it a computer problem, other than the computer, for whatever reason, was running very slow. We have a manual backup thing that'll take care of that, so if you were concerned about that, that slowed getting some of the results out to the lanes. That's been resolved. We have a plan B that we can implement at the drop of a hat, so that won't be an issue. The weather. I mentioned this only because of last year when we ultimately had to cancel. We do have an inclement weather date this year. Didn't think it was necessary last year, and obviously we were dead wrong. Bottom line is, everything is saying 40s and 50s across the state. While there may be rain as of right now, there's no indication of any kind of frozen precipitation or anything like that. If that suddenly changes in the next few days, we certainly will keep you posted. And if that does change in the next few days, if we need to, and we can make a decision by noon on Saturday, we'll do that. We realize that people have to leave pretty darn early on Sunday for us to wait that long. But again, current forecast, that's not even remotely an issue, but it's there in case we do need it. And again, given the experience of last year, we will certainly be having that as a standard in the future as well. And that's it in terms of the issues that are the items that I wanted to cover. Other than opening up for questions, the last point here is, as is noted, we went through a little bit of a structural change a few months ago, and Nick Anderson, Melissa Anger, and Sam Hodap Nick and Melissa are regional sport directors for the counties that are listed there, and they are your primary point of contact. If you have questions or issues or whatever, email them or contact them. Sam serves in a similar role for Baltimore City and Baltimore County, but he also has expanded responsibility so that he doesn't have the title of sport director or regional sport director, but he does serve in that function. So bottom line, if you can imagine having everybody email me with issues or questions and so on is just not reasonable and feasible, and I failed miserably, I will openly admit, in terms of being able to get back to people just because of the sheer volume. So we've made this change. Nick and Melissa and Sam will either have the answer for you or will get the answer for you if need be. And that said, that's all, again, that I wanted to cover. If you have any questions, remember to unmute your phone and go ahead and ask.
Mike, this is Kathy from Carroll County. How are you?
Hey, Kathy, how are you?
I'm doing well. We have one question for you. For the first time, we have a ramp bowler.
Okay.
We've run into a small problem. He does not have an aide to be with him. For regionals, our area director said, well, I'll go down and do it. She can't do it for state finals.
Did someone from Carroll County email me earlier today with this?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, I got a question with that, and Melissa, I passed it off to Melissa to give back or to respond to the person.
Oh, yes.
But
Okay.
the bottom line is yes, that I think it was your head coach was asking about that. I know it was one of the 4 ramp bowlers. The person in contact with exactly that situation wanted to know if the head coach could go down and be the ramp assistant, and that's fine. The only caveat, if you want to call it that, is that head coach needs to follow the same rules in terms of how the ramp is placed and under the direction of the bowler that anybody else would.
Right. She understands that.
Sure.
She understands.
That's fine. That's no problem.
But that is not a problem. Fantastic.
Yep.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Okay, hello. This is Stuart from Garrett County.
Hey, how you doing?
Not too bad. Well, we had our regional down in LaVale.
Yep.
And, of course, they had buku volunteers, which we all are short-handed of. I've noticed when I was down there that almost all the lanes we had, they had like 5 to 6 volunteers standing there, just cluttering things up.
Yep.
Getting in the way, and then finally, everybody's complaining to me about it. And finally, someone just take 4 out of the equation, leave 2 there, because they're standing up here with their phone, texting and talking, and the athletes can't get around the bowl.
Right. Yeah, that falls into the category of a good problem to have, but it's still a problem. We suddenly we had busted out trying to get volunteers there because we were very short, and then God bless Frostburg and several other sources out there, but they came through much stronger. We certainly expect to have plenty of volunteers, but not in terms of compared to the number of lanes that we have. LaVale, for anybody who's not familiar, LaVale has 24 lanes. Gaithersburg has 48. We should not be in any kind of a situation like that here. But we should be fine. We should be covered. Everything looks really good numbers-wise, but we shouldn't have that overwhelming number of people.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Mike, this is Al Meinhardt.
Hey, Al.
We're not
How are you?
planning on doing the 3 frames and then rotate an athlete 3 frames. Any of that for anyone, are we?
We would only do that in kind of an extreme situation. That is in the rules. I didn't touch on it because it should be fairly rare that we would do that.
Yeah, well, we tried it for 1 year and it was a fiasco. It really messed things up.
Yeah, I mean, that would only be typically in a situation where we have a ramp bowler who is just incredibly slow. And we want everybody to have a good opportunity there. I don't think we're going to be in that situation here. Also, we put a cap on the number of bowlers to 200. And so actually on most lanes, or most pairs of lanes, I should say, there's no more than 8. On a handful, there might be 9 or 10. But there's nobody who's higher than that. And we have a longer competition window to get everything done in than we do for the regionals. So they're really, unless something really strange is going on or there's a really kind of extreme situation, there should not be a need to do that. Because yes, I understand. Yeah, that can cause an incredible confusion, particularly with the electronic scoring as well. Okay. Any other questions? If not, okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight. As I mentioned at the beginning, and has been on the screen, we're recording this. Assuming that the recording is fine, it takes a little bit of time for it to get processed and then get posted. If that's I'm going to wait until that's all done before I send out these slides. I will also send with this. You received already your delegation list that have all your different bowlers and what lanes they're on and such. We'll also send to you when the YouTube is posted. We'll send as well the slides as well as the divisions that show who's bowling against who on which lanes. A little bit easier that way, and we'll have hard copies for that for you when you check in as well. But that'll help you. It might be a convenient way to keep track of where your bowlers are. So thank you much. Look forward to seeing you all in a few days. In the highly unlikely chance that the weather does make a significant change for the worse, we'll certainly keep in touch with you, but that's not looking like anything more than an extremely distant possibility. So thanks much, and we'll see you on Sunday. Good night.
Good night, Mike.
Good night.